The bill arrived at the table like a declaration of war. $8,000. I read the numbers 1, 2, 3 times, hoping that one of them would disappear by magic. But no, there they were, printed in black ink on white paper, as real as the silence that suddenly fell over the entire table. I was sitting at the head, with my hands on my lap, feeling the air in the restaurant becoming heavier, denser, as if someone had slammed all the windows shut at once. Around me, there were 20 people, 20, and none of them were mine. They all belonged to the family of Heather, my daughter-in-law. Everyone had eaten, drank, laughed, ordered extra dishes, desserts, bottles of wine that I did not even know existed. And now everyone was quiet, looking at me. I felt their eyes like needles pricking my skin. I looked at my son Anthony, searching his face for some sign that he was going to resolve this, that he was going to speak, that he was going to say something. But Anthony did not look at me. He had his eyes fixed on his phone, as if none of this was happening. I squeezed my fingers against the fabric of my skirt, trying to keep calm. My heart was beating so fast I thought everyone could hear it. I wanted to say something, but I did not know what. I wanted to get up, but my legs would not respond. And then Anthony looked up. He looked me straight in the eyes, without blinking, without any expression on his face, and he said, with a voice so cold it did not seem like his, "Mom, you pay there. We will be waiting in the car." Just like that, without hesitating, without shame, as if he were asking me to buy a loaf of bread. I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding me up for years. During my whole life, Heather was already standing, adjusting her purse on her shoulder, smiling barely. With that smile, I had learned to hate in silence. The others began to get up too, one by one, saying goodbye to each other, laughing as if nothing had happened, as if I were not there, as if I were invisible, as if I were only a wallet with legs. I stayed seated, with the bill in front of me, feeling like the world was moving in slow motion. Anthony was already walking toward the exit, without looking back. Heather followed him, talking with her mother, with her brothers, with her aunts. Nobody said thank you to me. Nobody asked me if I was okay. Nobody asked me if I could pay for that, because for them, I could. For them. I was Olivia Marshall, the woman who always said yes, the woman who always found a way, the woman who never complained. But in that moment, seated alone at that enormous table, surrounded by empty plates and dirty glasses, I knew something. I knew that this had not started today. This came from much earlier. This had been growing in silence, like a poisonous plant that I had watered without realizing it. And now it was in front of me, enormous, inevitable, asking me to pay for it. I took my purse with trembling hands. I opened it slowly, feeling how all the waiters were watching me from afar, waiting. The restaurant manager was already approaching, with that face of fake concern that people have when they know someone is not going to be able to pay. I took out my wallet, I opened it, and I saw my cards, my bills, everything I had saved for months, for years, everything I had gathered with so much effort. And then I thought about something. I thought about how many times I had done this before, how many times I had paid without anyone asking me, how many times I had given without anyone thanking me, how many times I had stayed silent so as not to cause problems. And I asked myself, until when? Until when was I going to keep doing this? Until when was I going to let them treat me as if I did not matter? I closed the wallet. I closed the purse. I got up from the chair, feeling my legs trembling, but they held me up. The manager looked at me surprised. I looked at him, and then I looked toward the door, where my son had already disappeared, and then I walked. I walked toward the exit, with my head held high, with my heart destroyed but with something new inside me, something I had not felt in a long time, something that looked like dignity. Behind me, I heard the manager calling me. I heard voices rising. I heard hurried steps, but I did not stop. I kept walking, because in that moment I knew that if I stopped, if I went back, if I paid that bill, I was going to die in there. Not physically, but in all the ways that matter. I was going to die as a woman, as a mother, as a human being, and I was not willing to die like that. Not yet. Not for them. It all started 3 days before, on a Tuesday afternoon, when the phone rang while I was watering the plants on the balcony. It was Anthony. I felt that small spark of joy I always felt when I saw his name on the screen. That foolish motherly illusion that thinks her son calls her because he misses her, because he wants to know how she is, because she matters to him. I answered quickly, wiping my hands on my apron. "Hello, son," I said, trying not to sound too anxious, too needy. He responded with a casual tone, almost uninterested. "Hello, Mom. I am calling quick. Heather and I want to invite you to dinner this Friday. Nothing formal. Just something quiet with family." I felt my heart fill with hope. It had been weeks since I had seen them. It had been weeks since I expected any sign that I still existed for them, that I still mattered. "Of course, son. Of course." I responded immediately, without thinking. "What time? Where? Do you need me to bring something?" Anthony paused, as if he were doing something else while he spoke to me. "No, Mom. Do not bring anything. Just come. I will send you the address later. It is a new restaurant that Heather likes." I nodded, although he could not see me. Perfect son. "I will be there. Thank you for inviting me." There was another awkward silence. And then he said, "Well, Mom, I have to hang up. See you Friday." And he cut the call before I could say anything else. I stayed there standing, with the phone in my hand, feeling that strange mix of happiness and emptiness I had learned to carry in the last few months. Happiness because my son had called me, because he had invited me, because I was going to see him. Emptiness because the call had been so short, so cold, so mechanical. But I told myself that it did not matter, that the important thing was that he had thought of me, that he still wanted me in his life. I went back to my plants, but I could not focus anymore. My mind was thinking about what to wear, if I should bring a gift for Heather even though Anthony had said no, if I should offer to pay the bill or wait for them to do it. I knew Anthony was not going through a good time financially. He never told me directly, but I noticed it. I noticed how he avoided talking about his work, how Heather always mentioned things they needed, things they wanted to buy but could not. I had helped several times. I had given them money for rent when they were behind. I had bought them things for the house. I had paid for car repairs. They never asked me directly, but they always dropped comments. They always made me feel that if I did not help, they were going to suffer, and I could not stand the idea of my son suffering. So I helped. I always helped. That night, I did not sleep well. I was tossing and turning in bed, thinking about the dinner, imagining how it would be. I imagined myself laughing with Anthony, talking with Heather, feeling that I was still part of something, that I still had a family, because that was my reality now. I lived alone in this small apartment since my husband had died 5 years ago. Anthony was all I had left. He was my only family, my only connection to the world. My friends told me I needed to get a life, that I needed to go out more, meet people, do things for myself. But I did not know how. I had spent my whole life being a wife, being a mother, being the person who took care of others. I did not know who Olivia Marshall was without that. I did not know what to do with myself when there was no one who needed me. The days passed slowly, as if time knew something important was going to happen. On Wednesday, I went to the bank to take out money, just in case. I took out $500 in cash and put them in my purse, in the secret compartment where I always kept important things. On Thursday, I went to the hairdresser and got my hair done. I wanted to look good. I wanted Anthony to feel proud of me. I wanted Heather not to have anything bad to say, because Heather always found something. There was always a comment about my clothes, about my hair, about how I spoke or how I acted. It was never anything direct. It was always disguised as concern, as advice, as help. But I felt it. I felt how she looked at me, how she measured me, how she judged me. And I, like a fool, always tried to please her, always tried to be better, to be enough for her. Friday arrived. I woke up early, with my nerves on edge. I showered. I put on my best dress, the one I had bought 2 years ago for a wedding and that I almost never used because I never had anywhere to go. I put on makeup carefully. I put on perfume. I put on the earrings my husband had given me on our last anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw a 67-year-old woman trying to look important, trying to look loved. I saw a woman who was hungry for love, for attention, for someone to tell her she still mattered, and it made me sad. It made me sad to see myself like that, so needy, so alone. But I forced myself to smile. I forced myself to think positively. Today was going to be a good day. Today I was going to be with my son. Too, that was the only thing that mattered. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes before the agreed time. I did not want to be late. I did not want Anthony to get upset. The place was elegant, much more elegant than I expected. There were white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters with impeccable uniforms. I felt out of place immediately, but I took a deep breath and went in. I gave my name to the hostess, and she led me toward a large table at the back of the room, a huge table. And that was when I saw it. That was when my stomach tightened and I knew something was wrong, because that table was not for 3 people. That table was not for 3 people. I stood next to the table, talking to someone on the phone. When he saw me arrive, he cut the call quickly and greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. His greeting was cold, automatic, like someone fulfilling an obligation. "Hello, Mom. You are early," he said. And I did not know if that was good or bad. I wanted to make sure not to be late, son. I responded, trying to sound cheerful, although inside I already felt a knot in my stomach. I looked at the giant table and then I looked at him. "Is it just going to be us 3? I asked, signaling with my gaze the 20 empty seats. Anthony avoided my eyes. "Oh, yes. Well, Heather invited some family members. You know how she is. She likes the family to be united." I nodded, although inside something told me this was not right, that something in all this did not make sense. "Some family members," I repeated, trying to maintain calm. "How many are coming?" Anthony shrugged, as if it were not important. "I do not know, Mom. 10, 15, not many. It is just a quiet dinner. Do not worry." But I was already worried, because this was not what he had told me. He had told me it would be something intimate, something family style, just the 3 of us. And now it turned out there were going to be 15 people I did not know, people from Heather's family, people who did not even know who I was. I felt deceived, but I said nothing. I did not want to ruin the night. I did not want Anthony to think I was a bitter woman, a problematic old lady who could not adapt to anything. So I smiled and said, "That is fine, son. No problem." Heather arrived 10 minutes later, accompanied by her mother, by 2 sisters and 3 cousins. They all entered laughing, talking loudly, occupying the space as if the entire restaurant were theirs. Heather greeted me with an air kiss, without touching me, and said, "Hello, Olivia. Good that you could come." Could. As if I had to make a huge effort to be there, as if I were doing them a favor. I swallowed hard and responded, "Thank you for inviting me, Heather." She was not looking at me anymore. She was already introducing me to her family, as if I were one more piece of furniture. "She is Olivia, Anthony's mom," she was saying. And everyone nodded with fake courtesy, with those smiles that do not reach the eyes. Nobody asked me questions. Nobody showed interest. They just greeted me and continued with their conversations. I sat at a corner of the table, as far as possible from the center. Anthony sat at the other end, next to Heather, surrounded by all her family. I stayed there, alone, without anyone talking to me, watching as everyone laughed, toasted, ordered drinks. The waiter passed several times offering wines, cocktails, appetizers. I ordered only a glass of water. I did not want to spend. I did not want to draw attention. But all the others ordered without limit. I saw how Heather's mother ordered a bottle of wine worth $200. I saw how the cousins ordered appetizers, special dishes, things from the menu that did not even have a visible price. And every time someone ordered something, I felt my stomach tighten a little more, because I knew how these things worked. I knew that when the bill arrived, someone was going to have to pay it, and I was afraid of being that someone. I tried to talk to Anthony from my spot. I called him a couple of times, but he did not hear me. Or he pretended not to hear me. He was too busy laughing with Heather's brothers, too busy pouring wine, too busy being the perfect son-in-law. I felt invisible. I felt that I did not matter there, that I was just an ornament. One more number at the table. And then the food arrived. Huge plates, steaks, seafood, sides, sauces. Everything looked beautiful. Everything smelled delicious, but I could barely eat. I had a knot in my throat that would not let me swallow. Around me, everyone ate and laughed as if this were the most normal thing in the world, as if spending hundreds of dollars in a single night was something every day, something unimportant. At one moment, Heather's sister, a woman of about 40 who did not stop talking, looked at me from the other side of the table and said, "Olivia, you must be proud of Anthony. Heather tells us he is a very attentive son, very generous." I did not know what to respond. Generous? Anthony? My son, who had not visited me in months unless it was to ask for something, who called me only when he needed money, who had invited me to this dinner without even warning me it was going to be a massive event. But I smiled and said, "Yes, I am very proud of him." Because that was what I was supposed to say. That was what a good mother said, even though inside she felt something was deeply wrong. Then Heather's mother, a lady of about 60 with expensive jewelry and an air of superiority, leaned toward me and asked me, "Olivia, do you still work or are you already retired?" The question sounded innocent, but I felt the venom behind it. "I am retired," I responded calmly. "I worked 30 years as an administrative assistant at a CPA firm." She nodded, but her expression did not change. "Oh, how nice. Surely you have a good pension then." I felt my face getting hot. "It is modest, but it is enough for me to live," I said, trying to sound dignified. She smiled, but it was not a kind smile. How nice, because raising children is not easy, and now that they are grown, at least one can enjoy a little of what one saved, right? I nodded, but inside something broke, because I knew exactly what she was doing. She was measuring me. She was calculating how much money I had, how much she could get out of me. Heather joined the conversation. "Yes, Olivia is very hardworking. Anthony always tells us how she raised him alone after his dad died." I looked at my son, hoping he would say something, that he would defend me, that he would set limits. But Anthony only nodded and kept eating. Heather continued. "In fact, recently she helped us with the rent. It is lucky to have such an understanding mother-in-law." I felt how all the gazes at the table landed on me. I felt how they weighed me, how they judged me, how they labeled me. Olivia, the mother-in-law with money. Olivia, the one who pays. Olivia, the piggy bank. I wanted to scream. I wanted to get up and run out, but I did not do it. I stayed there, quiet, smiling, pretending everything was fine. Heather's brother, a young man of about 30, ordered another bottle of wine. Then he ordered desserts for the whole table. Then he ordered coffee, liquors, digestives. And every time he ordered something, he looked toward where I was, as if he were waiting for my reaction, as if he were testing me. I kept my gaze low, my hands on my lap, my heart beating so hard I felt it was going to explode. And then, in the middle of all that chaos, Anthony got up and went to the bathroom. Heather followed him a few minutes later. I stayed alone at the table with all these strange people, feeling how time became eternal, how every second was torture. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody included me. I was just the one who was there, occupying space, waiting for something to happen. When Anthony and Heather returned, he had a weird expression on his face. He would not look me in the eyes. Heather, on the other hand, was smiling, a triumphant smile, victorious, and I knew, in that moment, that something bad was coming, something much worse than everything that had already happened that night, because I knew that look. I had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who has already made a decision, of someone who has already planned everything, of someone who is only waiting for the perfect moment to execute their plan. And I was the target. When everyone finished eating, when there was nothing left on the plates, when the glasses were empty and the desserts consumed, the atmosphere changed. There was a strange silence, as if everyone were waiting for something. I looked around trying to understand what was happening, but nobody returned my gaze. Everyone avoided my eyes. Everyone seemed to be concentrated on their phones, on their private conversations, on anything except me, except on the reality of what was coming. The waiter approached the table with a black folder in his hand, the check. My heart started to beat faster. I looked toward Anthony, hoping he would do something, that he would ask for the bill, that he would take control of the situation. But Anthony was still on his phone, writing messages, completely ignoring what was happening. The waiter left the folder in the center of the table and retired discreetly. Nobody touched it. Nobody opened it. Everyone simply stayed there, like statues, waiting. Heather's mother was the first to speak. "What a wonderful dinner," she said with a wide smile. It had been a long time since we ate so well as a family. The others nodded, murmuring words of agreement. "Yes, it was incredible," said one of the cousins. "We should do this more often," added one of the sisters. I listened to all this feeling my stomach twisting, because nobody was mentioning the bill, nobody was offering to pay, nobody was even recognizing that there was a pending debt on the table, and I knew why. I knew exactly why. Heather got up from her chair and walked toward the bathroom, taking two of her sisters with her. They passed next to me without saying a word, without even looking at me. I stayed there, feeling the weight of the situation falling on my shoulders. Anthony finally put away his phone and looked at me. But it was not the look of a worried son. It was not the look of someone trying to solve a problem. It was a cold look, calculating, distant, a look I did not recognize, a look that scared me. "Mom," he said in a low voice, barely audible among the noise of the restaurant. I leaned forward to hear him better. "Yes, son," I responded, with a trembling voice, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. He did not answer immediately. He stayed looking at me, as if he were evaluating something, as if he were deciding what to say or how to say it. And then he said it. He said it with a naturalness that froze my blood. "The bill is $8,000. I felt the world stop. $8,000. 8,000. I repeated the number in my mind several times, trying to process it, trying to understand how it was possible that a dinner cost so much. $8,000, I repeated out loud, almost breathless. Anthony nodded, without showing any emotion. "Yes, it is an expensive restaurant, but it was worth it. Do not you think? Everyone enjoyed it a lot. I could not believe what I was hearing. I could not believe my son was talking about this as if it were something normal, as if $8,000 were loose change. "Anthony, I do not have $8,000, I said, feeling my voice break. "I did not know this was going to cost so much. You told me it was a simple dinner, something quiet with family." He shrugged, as if my anguish meant nothing to him. "Well, Mom, Things changed. Heather wanted to invite her family, and you know how these things are. One cannot control what others order. I looked at him in disbelief. One cannot control. He was the one who had organized this. He was the one who had invited me. He was the one who had never warned me that this was going to be a massive event, an expensive celebration, a financial trap. Son. I cannot pay that, I repeated, feeling the tears beginning to form in my eyes. It is too much money. It is more than I earn in 3 months. Anthony sighed, as if I were being difficult, as if I were exaggerating. Mom, do not be dramatic. You have savings, you have your pension. I know you can do it. I felt something inside me break. My savings, my pension. He knew everything about my financial situation because I had told him, because I trusted him, because I thought he took care of me, that he protected me, that he would never use that information against me. But I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Anthony, those savings are for emergencies, I said, trying to maintain calm, trying to make him listen to reason. They are for when I get sick, for when I need something important. They are not to pay for a dinner that I did not even know was going to cost so much. He leaned toward me, lowering his voice even more, speaking with a tone that sounded almost threatening. Mom, listen to me closely. All these people are important to Heather. They are important to me. We cannot look bad here. We cannot look like starving people who cannot pay a bill. Do you understand what I am telling you? I looked at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. My son was telling me that his image, his reputation in front of his wife's family, was more important than my well-being, than my financial stability, than my dignity. Son, please, I whispered, feeling the tears finally beginning to roll down my cheeks. Do not do this to me. Do not put me in this situation. But Anthony was not listening to me anymore. He was not looking at me anymore. Heather had returned from the bathroom with her sisters, all laughing, all oblivious to what was happening. Or maybe not so oblivious. Maybe they knew exactly what was happening. Maybe all this had been planned from the beginning. Heather approached Anthony and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and then got up from the table. I looked at him desperate, hoping he was going to resolve this, that he was going to talk to the manager, that he was going to find a solution. But no, he walked toward the exit of the restaurant, and Heather followed him. And one by one, all the members of his family began to get up too. I stayed frozen in my chair, watching everyone leave, watching how they left me alone with the bill in the center of the table. Heather's mother passed next to me and gave me a little pat on the shoulder. Thank you for dinner, Olivia. Everything was delicious, and she kept walking as if nothing happened, as if she had just thanked me for something I had offered voluntarily, something I had wanted to do, but I had not wanted to do any of this. I had only wanted to see my son. I had only wanted to feel that I still had a family, and now I was here, alone, abandoned, with a debt of $8,000 in front of me and not knowing what to do. The cousins, the sisters, the uncles, they all passed next to me saying goodbye with fake smiles, with empty thanks, with looks that said, "Poor old lady, what a pity," but none offered to help. None asked if I was okay. None questioned why I had to pay for all of them, because for them, I was just that. The mother-in-law with money, the old lady who paid, the fool who always said yes, and I had let them see me like that. I had allowed them to treat me like that, for months, for years. I had accepted this without saying anything, without setting limits, without defending myself, and now I was paying the price. Anthony appeared at the entrance of the restaurant. He looked at me from afar, with that same cold expression, and made a gesture with his hand, a gesture that said, "Hurry up. We are waiting." And then he said it. He said it out loud, loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear him. "Mom, you pay there. We will be waiting in the car." And he left. He turned around and left, leaving me there, exposed, humiliated, destroyed. I stayed seated, with my hands trembling, with my heart broken in 1,000 pieces, feeling all the eyes of the restaurant sticking into me. The waiter approached with caution, with the folder in his hand, waiting. And I knew the moment had arrived. The moment in which I had to decide who I was. The moment in which I had to choose between continuing to be the Olivia everyone knew, or becoming someone completely different. The waiter remained standing next to me, holding the black folder with the bill as if it were a death sentence. I could feel his discomfort. I could feel how he too was waiting, evaluating, wondering if I was going to be able to pay or if there was going to be a problem. I extended my hand toward the folder with trembling fingers and opened it. There it was, $8,122.50. I read every line. 3 bottles of wine at $200 each, 2 bottles of champagne at $350, lobsters, imported steaks, special dishes I had not even seen pass by my side of the table, gourmet desserts, specialty coffee, premium liquors. Everything was there, detailed. Every cent spent by people who did not even know me, who had not even directed a word to me beyond a polite and fake greeting. I closed the folder and held it against my chest. My mind was racing at 1,000 miles per hour. I had $500 cash in my purse. I had a credit card with a limit of $3,000 that I kept only for emergencies. I had a debit card connected to my savings account where the last $6,000 I had left in the world were. $6,000 that I had gathered for years, working overtime, saving every cent, depriving myself of things, of trips, of pleasures, of everything, just to have something that gave me security, something that protected me in case something bad happened. And now my son was asking me to spend all that, to empty my account, to leave me with nothing, just to save his image in front of people I did not care about. The waiter cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, do you need a moment?" he asked with a kind voice, but I could hear the pressure behind his words. I looked up at him and nodded. "Yes. Please, just a moment." He walked away, but not too far. He stayed close, watching, waiting. I looked toward the exit of the restaurant. I could see the glass doors, the dark street on the other side, the lights of the cars passing. I knew Anthony was outside, sitting in his car, waiting for me to do what I always did, waiting for me to pay, waiting for me to swallow my pride, my pain, my humiliation, and act like the good mother I had always been, the mother who never said no, the mother who always sacrificed herself. I took my phone out of my purse with trembling hands. I dialed Anthony's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. He did not answer. I dialed again. Nothing. I sent a message. "Son, please come back. I need to talk to you. This is too much." I waited, looking at the screen, begging for the 3 dots to appear indicating he was writing. But they did not appear. Nothing. He was ignoring me. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew I was desperate, that I was suffering, and he did not care. Or maybe he did care, but he cared more about his pride, more about his image, more about what Heather and her family thought of him. I looked at the bill again. $8,000 for a dinner, for 2 hours of food and drink with people who did not know me, who did not appreciate me, who probably would not even remember my name tomorrow. I thought about all the times I had helped Anthony. I thought about the $2,000 I gave him when he fell behind on rent. I thought about the $1,500 I lent him to fix the car. I thought about the expensive birthday gifts for Heather, about the appliances I bought them when they moved, about the times I paid for their groceries without them asking me, just because I wanted to help, just because I wanted to be a good mother-in-law, someone useful, someone who deserved to be in their lives. I thought about my husband, about how he had told me before dying that I should take care of myself, that I should think about myself, that I owed nothing to anyone but myself. He had left me a little money. Not much, but something. And I had spent it all on Anthony, all of it. Because I thought that was love, because I thought a good mother sacrificed herself until the end, until being left with nothing. But now, sitting there in that elegant and cold restaurant, surrounded by empty plates and dirty glasses, I wondered if my husband had not been right. I wondered if all this time I had not been making a huge mistake, a mistake that was now sending me the bill. The manager of the restaurant approached the table. He was a man of about 50 with a dark suit and serious expression. "Ma'am, excuse the interruption. I just wanted to confirm if you are going to proceed with the payment." His tone was professional but firm. I knew what that meant. It meant that if I did not pay, they were going to take measures. Measures I did not even want to imagine. "Yes, I am going to pay," I said, although my voice sounded like someone else's, like someone who was very far away. The manager nodded. "Perfect. Will it be in cash or card?" I opened my purse and looked inside. My hands were trembling so much I could barely hold anything. I took out my wallet. I took out the $500 in cash. I put them on the table. Then I took out my credit card. I held it between my fingers, looking at it as if it were something alien, something that did not belong to me. If I used that card, I was going to be in debt. I was going to have to pay interest. I was going to have to live with that debt for months, maybe years. And then I took out my debit card, the card connected to my savings, to everything I had left. If I used that card, I was going to be left with less than $2,000 in the bank. $2,000 to live the rest of my days. $2,000 for medicine, for food, for emergencies, for everything. I looked toward the exit again. Outside, in the darkness, was my son, my only son. The boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy for whom I had worked double shifts for years so he could study, so he could have a better life than mine, the boy who was now doing this to me, and I felt something I had never felt toward him before. I felt rage, pure rage, hot, burning. Rage because he had lied to me, rage because he had used me, rage because he knew exactly what he was doing and he had done it anyway, rage because he had turned me into this, into a broken woman, humiliated, abandoned in a restaurant with a bill she could not pay. The manager was still there, waiting. The waiters were watching from afar. Some people at other tables had noticed what was happening and were whispering among themselves. I could feel their looks, their judgments, their opinions forming about me. Poor old lady. What a shame. Surely the family abandoned her with the bill. What ungrateful children. But nobody approached. Nobody offered help. Nobody did anything other than watch and judge. Because that is what people do. They watch, they judge, but they do not act. Not when it means getting involved, not when it means risking something of their own. I put the 2 cards on the table next to the cash. "I am going to pay with this," I said, pointing to everything. My voice sounded hollow, lifeless. The manager took the cards and the cash. "I am going to process it. One moment, please." He walked away and I stayed there, alone again, feeling my entire life crumbling before my eyes. I thought about my mother, who had died when I was young. I thought about what she would have told me if she were here. Probably she would have told me that family is the most important thing, that one always forgives, that children are children and one has to endure whatever for them. But my mother had never gone through this. My mother had never been humiliated like this by her own son. I thought about the women my age that I knew. Some lived with their children, happy, cared for, loved. Others lived alone but had good relationships with their families. They saw each other often, they shared, they supported each other. And then there was me, who had given everything and now had nothing. Me, who had sacrificed everything and now was being sacrificed. Me, who had believed that a mother's love was unconditional and now discovered that a son's love was not. The manager returned with a receipt. The payment was processed, he said, handing me the papers. It is $8,122.50, $500 in cash, $3,000 on the credit card, and $4,622 with $50 on the debit card. I took the receipt and looked at it. There it was, the proof of my humiliation, the proof that I had paid for my own degradation. I put the paper in my purse and got up from the chair. My legs barely held me up. The manager looked at me with something that looked like pity. "Have a good night, ma'am." I nodded without saying anything and walked toward the exit. Each step was heavy, painful, as if I were walking toward my own execution. I pushed the glass doors and went out to the street. The cold night air hit my face. I searched with my gaze for Anthony's car. I saw it parked half a block away, with the lights on, waiting for me, and something inside me broke completely. I walked toward Anthony's car, feeling how each step weighed more than the last. My legs were trembling, not from cold, but from contained rage, from accumulated pain, from years of silence that now screamed inside me. I could see a silhouette in the driver's seat, Heather's in the passenger seat, both looking forward, as if nothing had happened, as if they had not left me alone inside paying a bill that equaled half a year of my pension. I arrived at the car and tapped on the window. Anthony lowered the glass barely a few inches, enough so I could hear him. "Did you pay already, Mom?" he asked, without even looking me in the eyes. His voice sounded impatient, annoyed, as if I had taken too long, as if I had ruined his night with my slowness. "Yes, Anthony, I paid already," I responded. My voice came out firmer than I expected, more controlled. He nodded and began to raise the window again, but I put my hand on the glass, stopping it. "Wait, I need to talk to you." Anthony sighed with frustration. "Mom, it is late. We are tired. We will talk tomorrow." I felt something inside me break definitively, something that had been held together with pins for years, something that had been resisting every humiliation, every lack of respect, every moment of being treated as if I did not matter, and now that something had broken, and there was no way to repair it, no Anthony. "We are going to talk now," I said, and this time my voice sounded different. It sounded hard. It sounded like the voice of someone who has nothing left to lose. He looked at me finally, with that expression of annoyance I had seen so many times in the last months. "What is wrong now, Mom? Are you going to make a drama over the dinner? I already told you I'm going to pay you later." I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, without joy, without humor. "You are going to pay me? With what money, Anthony? With the money you borrowed 3 months ago and never returned? With the money I gave you for rent and never saw back either? With what money exactly are you going to pay me $8,000? Heather turned in her seat and looked at me with disdain. "Olivia, do not be dramatic. It was just a dinner. Besides, you have your pension, you have your savings. It is not like you are going to starve." Those words were like a punch in the stomach. It is not like you are going to starve. As if that were enough. As if I should be grateful to simply survive, to have the minimum. While they spent my money on luxuries they did not even need. "Heather, that is not your decision," I said, looking directly at her. "That is not your money, and you have no right to tell me what I spend it on or what I do not spend it on." She raised her eyebrows, surprised that I answered her, surprised that I was not simply bowing my head and accepting everything as I always did. Wow, it seems someone is upset. "Anthony, your mom is upset because she helped her family. How sad." No, she said it with sarcasm, with mockery, laughing while she said it. Anthony said nothing in my defense. He did not ask Heather to shut up. He did not defend me as a son should defend his mother. He just stayed there, quiet, letting his wife insult me, humiliate me, treat me as if I were trash. And that was worse than anything she could say, because it showed me that my son had chosen his side, and that side was not mine. "You know what, Anthony?" I said, taking a step back from the car. "You are right. I am upset, but not because I helped my family. I am upset because I realized something. I realized that you are no longer my family, not in the way that matters. My family would not have lied to me about this dinner. My family would not have left me alone in that restaurant. My family would not have treated me like a wallet with legs." Anthony finally showed some emotion, anger. "Do not be ridiculous, Mom. What are you talking about? Of course you are my family. You are my mother." I shook my head. "No, Anthony. A mother is someone you respect, someone you take care of, someone you value. But I am none of that to you. I am just someone convenient, someone from whom you can take what you need when you need it. And I allowed that. I allowed you to treat me like that because I was afraid of losing you, afraid of being left alone, afraid of admitting that my son had become someone I do not recognize." My voice broke at the end, but I did not cry. I was not going to give them that satisfaction. Heather let out a cruel laugh. "Oh, please, this is pathetic. Anthony, let's go. Your mom is being dramatic as always." But I had not finished. $8,000. Anthony, $8,000 that I did not have, that I should not spend, that I did not want to spend, but I spent them. I spent them because you asked me to, because you told me it was important, because I still had that stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, if I did this, you would go back to being the son I knew, but I was wrong. That son does not exist anymore, and maybe he never existed. Anthony hit the steering wheel with frustration. "Enough, Mom. You always do the same thing, always with your guilt, always with your drama. I told you I am going to pay you." "No," I said firmly, "you are not going to pay me, because I am no longer going to accept anything from you. I am not going to accept your money. I am not going to accept your empty promises. And definitely, I am not going to accept you treating me like this ever again." I took another step back, moving away from the car. Anthony opened the door and got out, walking toward me with quick steps. "What is that supposed to mean? Are you threatening me?" I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that were once those of my baby, those of my little boy, those of my son who hugged me and told me I was the best mom in the world. But those eyes were no longer there. There was only coldness, manipulation, selfishness. "I am not threatening you, Anthony. I am telling you the truth. It is over. I am no longer going to be your backup plan. I am no longer going to be your financial solution. I am no longer going to be the person you call only when you need something." Heather got out of the car too, crossing her arms with arrogance. "Wow, how brave you got all of a sudden, Olivia. And what are you going to do? Are you going to cut contact with your only son? Please. We know you are not going to do it. You always come back. You always forgive. Because you are alone and you need us more than we need you." Her words were like poison. But I did not back down, because deep down, she was right about one thing. I had been alone. I had been needing them. But that was about to change. You are right, Heather. I have been alone. But I prefer to be alone with dignity than accompanied being humiliated. I turned around and started walking down the street, moving away from them, moving away from the car, moving away from everything. "Mom, do not be stupid. How are you going to get to your house?" Anthony shouted behind me. I did not stop. I took out my phone and called a taxi. In 5 minutes, he was there. I got in without looking back, without turning to see if Anthony was following me, without caring any more about anything they thought or said. The driver asked me for the address, and I gave it to him with a calm voice as the taxi drove away. I looked one last time through the rear window. Anthony and Heather were still standing there, watching the taxi leave, and I knew something had changed forever, something that would never be the same again. I arrived at my apartment past midnight. The taxi dropped me at the entrance, and I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling every step as if it weighed 1,000 kilos. I opened the door and entered the darkness. I did not turn on the lights immediately. I stayed there, standing in the threshold, with my purse hanging from my shoulder, with the receipt of $8,000 deep in the wallet. The house was silent, a heavy silence, crushing. That reminded me that I was alone, that I had always been alone, that the company I believed I had with Anthony was just an illusion, a mirage I had invented so as not to face the reality of my life. I walked to the sofa and let myself fall on it. I did not cry. I had no tears left. I only felt a huge void in my chest. As if someone had ripped something vital from me and left me hollow. I thought about all the money I had just spent. $8,000. I calculated mentally how much I had left. $1,300 in my savings account, $500 in cash that I had kept at home for emergencies, and a debt of $3,000 on my credit card that I was going to have to pay with interest I could not afford. In total, less than $2,000 to live. My pension was $900 a month. My rent was $600. I had $300 left for food, medicine, utilities, transport, everything. $300 to survive a whole month. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator and saw the little that was inside. Milk, eggs, some vegetables, a piece of cheese. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of everything crushing me. How had I reached this? How had I allowed my life to become this? I had worked for 30 years. I had been a responsible woman, thrifty, careful. I had planned my retirement. I had saved money. I had been prudent. And now all that had vanished. All for my son. All for trying to maintain a relationship that only existed in my imagination. I went back to the living room and sat in front of the small table where I had my phone. I picked it up and saw I had 3 missed calls from Anthony and several messages. The first said, "Mom, do not be like that. You know I love you." The second, "Heather says you exaggerated, but it is okay. She will get over it." The third, "Tomorrow we talk when you are calmer." I read the messages without feeling anything. No anger, no sadness, nothing. Just a deep void. Because I realized something. Anthony was not sorry. Anthony was not worried about me. Anthony was just annoyed because I had reacted, because I had broken the pattern, because I had not done what he expected. He saw nothing wrong in what he had done. For him, it was normal. It was acceptable. It was what a mother should do for her son. Pay, shut up, obey, and keep paying. I blocked his number. It was an impulse, something I did without thinking much. But the moment I did it, I felt something strange. It was not relief exactly, but it was not pain either. It was as if I had closed a door that had been open for too long, letting in drafts of cold air that made me sick. Now that door was closed, and I was inside, alone, but at least protected. I left the phone aside and stared at the wall. I thought about my husband, about what he would have told me. Probably he would have told me I did the right thing, that nobody deserved to be treated like that, not even by a son. But he also would have asked me what I was going to do now, because now I was truly alone. I no longer had the illusion of having a family. I no longer had anyone. I got up and went to my room. I changed my clothes. I took off the elegant dress I had worn with so much excitement hours before, thinking I was going to spend a nice night with my son. Now that dress disgusted me. I threw it in a corner of the room and put on my old comfortable pajamas. I got into bed, but I could not sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About the years I had spent raising Anthony alone. About the nights I had worked late to be able to pay for his studies. About the times I had deprived myself of eating so he could have food in his lunchbox. About everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given. And I asked myself if it had been worth it. I asked myself if all that sacrifice had served for something, or if I had only created a selfish son who saw me as a resource and not as a person. The night was eternal. When finally the sun came out, I was still awake. I got up and made myself a coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and took out the receipt from the dinner. I spread it in front of me and looked at it carefully. As if looking at it, I could understand better what had happened. $8,122.50 for a single night, for 2 hours of humiliation, for the final proof that I did not matter to my son. I took the receipt and tore it into small pieces. Then I threw them in the trash, not because I wanted to forget, but because I did not want to keep seeing that evidence of my own stupidity, of my own weakness, of everything I had allowed. 2 days passed, 2 days in which I did not leave my house. I did not speak to anyone. I did nothing but think. Think about who I was now. Think about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Think about how I was going to survive with so little money. The third day, someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw it was Anthony. He was standing there, with his hands in his pockets, looking toward the ground. I did not open. I stayed on the other side of the door, listening. He knocked again, harder this time. "Mom, I know you are there. Open the door. We have to talk." I still did not open, not because I was afraid, but because I had nothing to say to him. "Not anymore. Mom, please," he insisted. I came to apologize. Heather and I talked. We realized that maybe we went a little too far with the dinner. We want to fix things. I listened to his words and realized something. He was not apologizing for real. He was saying what he thought I wanted to hear so I would go back to being the one from before. So I would be available again. So I would give him money again when he needed it. It was not genuine regret. It was manipulation. It was control. It was the same as always disguised as an apology. "Mom, open the door or I am going to think you are sick and I am going to have to call someone," he said, and this time his voice sounded annoyed, threatening. But I did not move. I stayed there, on the other side of the door, in silence. After a few minutes, I heard his steps moving away. I heard how he went down the stairs, how he got into his car, how he left, and only then I breathed with relief. I went back to the living room and sat down. I took my phone and saw I had more messages from him. I deleted them without reading them. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I changed my phone number. I went to the phone company the next day and asked for a new line. I explained that I needed a change for personal reasons. They asked no questions. They gave me a new number and I left there feeling strange, feeling as if I had cut the last thread connecting me to my previous life, with the Olivia who always said yes, with the Olivia who always forgave, with the Olivia who was always available. That night, I slept better than in weeks. It was not a deep sleep, but at least I slept. And when I woke up, something had changed. It was not happiness exactly. It was not peace. But it was something resembling acceptance. Acceptance that my life was this now. Acceptance that I was alone. Acceptance that maybe I had always been alone. But now at least I was honest about it. I was no longer living in a fantasy. I was no longer pretending I had a family that loved me. Now I was living in reality, and that reality, although painful, was more bearable than the lie. A week after the dinner, I was at the supermarket buying basics: bread, milk, eggs, rice, simple things I could stretch through the month. I was checking the prices of everything, comparing brands, calculating every cent. That was my new reality. I could no longer afford the luxury of buying without thinking. Every dollar counted now. I was in the dairy aisle when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Olivia? Olivia Marshall. I turned around and saw Rose, a woman who had worked with me years ago at the accounting office. I had not seen her in more than 2 years. She approached with a warm smile and gave me a hug. So good to see you. How have you been? I forced a smile. Good. Rose. Here. Doing the shopping. She looked at me with more attention, as if she could see through my lie. Sure? You look tired. Olivia, everything is okay. I nodded quickly, not wanting to go into details, but Rose was not one of those who settled for superficial answers. Come, let's go have a coffee. It has been a long time since we talked. I wanted to say no, that I was in a hurry, that I had things to do, but the truth was I had nothing. I had nowhere to go. I had no one to talk to. I had nothing but my empty apartment waiting for me, so I accepted. We paid for our groceries and went to a small cafeteria near the supermarket. We sat at a table by the window. Rose ordered 2 coffees and some pastries. I protested, saying I was not hungry. But she insisted. Do not be silly, Olivia. It is my treat. When the coffees arrived, she looked me straight in the eyes and asked me, what happened? And do not tell me nothing. Because I know you. Something is wrong. I lowered my gaze to my cup, feeling the tears beginning to form. I did not want to cry. I had already cried enough. But Rose's words, her genuine concern, broke something inside me, and I began to talk. I told her everything. The dinner, the $8,000, the humiliation, how Anthony had left me alone with the bill, how I had changed my phone number. Rose listened to me in silence, without interrupting, just nodding from time to time. When I finished, she took my hand on the table. Olivia, what your son did to you is abuse. That is not love. That is not family. That is someone who is using you. I nodded, because deep down I already knew, but hearing it out loud, hearing it from someone else, gave it a different weight. It gave it validity. You did right to distance yourself, Rose continued. I know it hurts. I know he is your son, but there are limits, and he crossed them all. I wiped my tears with a napkin. I do not know what to do now, Rose. I am alone. I am without money, and I am afraid. You are not alone, said Rose, firmly. You have me, and we are going to find a way for you to get ahead. We spent the next hour talking. Rose told me she knew other women who had gone through similar situations with their adult children. She told me there were support groups, communities where older women helped each other. She told me about small job opportunities, things I could do to earn a little extra money, babysitting, cleaning jobs, cooking for small events, nothing glamorous, but things that could help me survive. When we said goodbye, Rose gave me her phone number. Call me whenever you want, Olivia, for whatever. You do not have to go through this alone. That night, in my apartment, I felt different. I was still scared. I was still hurt, but there was something new, something small, but real. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life. I could create something new. Something that did not depend on Anthony. Something that was only mine. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, thinking that maybe it was Anthony from another phone, but I answered. It was Heather. Olivia, we need to talk. She said without even saying hello. Her voice sounded tense, annoyed. What do you want, Heather? I asked with a tired voice. Anthony is very bad because of you. He does not sleep. He does not eat. He is worried about you. I almost laughed. If he is so worried, why doesn't he come to talk to me? Heather paused. Because you changed your number. Because you do not open the door. Because you are acting like a capricious child. I felt the rage rising in my throat. I am not the one who acted wrong, Heather. I was not the one who organized an $8,000 dinner without warning. I was not the one who left her mother alone paying a bill she could not pay. I was not the one who lied. Heather sighed with exasperation. Get over it already, Olivia. It was just a dinner. Besides, Anthony told you he is going to pay you. I do not want his money, I responded firmly. I do not want anything from you anymore. Wow, how dramatic, said Heather with sarcasm. And what are you going to do? Are you going to cut contact with your only son over a stupid dinner? If necessary. Yes, I said. And this time my voice did not tremble. This time it sounded sure, decided. Heather stayed quiet for a moment, as if she could not believe what she was hearing. Then her tone changed. It became more aggressive. You know what, Olivia? Better this way. Anthony does not need you. We do not need you. Live your life alone and bitter if that is what you want. And she hung up. I stayed with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of emotions. Pain. Because those words still hurt me. But also relief. Relief knowing that now everything was clear. There were no more masks. There were no more pretenses. They had shown who they really were. And I had chosen not to accept it. The following days were strange. There were moments when I felt strong, moments when I felt I had done the right thing. But there were also moments of weakness, moments when I wanted to call Anthony, moments when I missed the illusion of having a family, even if that family treated me poorly, but every time I felt that weakness. I remembered that night at the restaurant. I remembered my son's face when he told me to pay. I remembered Heather's laugh. I remembered how everyone had abandoned me there, and that gave me the strength to keep going, to not go back, to not fall into the same pattern again. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the dinner, I received an unexpected visit. Someone knocked on the door, and when I opened, I saw a young woman standing there. She was about 30, dark hair, tired eyes. "Are you Olivia Marshall?" she asked. I nodded cautiously. "Yes, it is me. Can I help you with something?" She introduced herself as Paula, a distant cousin of Heather. "I need to talk to you. It is about what happened at the dinner." My first instinct was to close the door, to not want to know anything more about that family. But something in her expression stopped me. She did not seem to be there to attack me. She seemed nervous, even scared. I let her in. We sat in the living room and Paula began to speak. "I was at that dinner. I was one of the people who ate and drank while you paid. And I came to apologize." I looked at her surprised. She continued. "I did not know what Heather and Anthony were planning. None of us knew. Heather told us it was a family dinner, that everything was arranged, that we did not have to worry about anything. When I saw what happened, when I saw how they left you alone with the bill, I felt horrible." Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to say something. I wanted to offer to help. But Heather stopped me. She told me that if I got involved, she was going to make my life impossible in the family, and I am a coward, Mrs. Olivia. I stayed quiet. I did not know what to say. Part of me wanted to be angry with her too, but I saw her genuine regret and I could not. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Paula took a deep breath. "Because after that dinner, things exploded in the family. Heather told everyone that you were being dramatic, that you had cut contact with Anthony for nothing. But some of us started talking, and we realized that this was not the first time. Heather has done this before with other people. She has used people. She has manipulated situations to get benefits, and I do not want to be part of that anymore." She extended an envelope to me. This is what I ate that night. "I calculated how much it was, and I brought you the money. It is $350. I know it is not much compared to what you paid, but it is what corresponds to me." I took the envelope with trembling hands. $350. It was not much, as she said. But it meant something bigger. It meant not everyone was like Anthony and Heather. It meant there were still good people people with a conscience, people who recognized when something was wrong. "Thank you, Paula," I said with a soft voice. She got up to leave. "One more thing, Mrs. Olivia. What you did, distancing yourself from them, was the bravest thing I have seen, and I think more people in the family should do the same." When she left, I stayed sitting with the envelope in my hands, feeling something I had not felt in weeks: validation. I was not crazy. I was not exaggerating. What they had done to me was wrong, and someone else had seen it. Someone else had recognized it. 3 months passed since that dinner. 3 months in which my life changed in ways I never imagined. It was not easy. There were nights I cried. Nights I missed Anthony with a physical pain that split my chest. There were moments my phone rang with unknown numbers and I knew it was him, trying to contact me again, and I had to resist the temptation to answer. But with every day that passed, I became stronger. With every day that passed, I remembered more clearly why I had made that decision. And with every day that passed, I built a new life that was only mine. Rose kept her promise. She connected me with a group of older women who met every Wednesday at a community center. At first, I did not want to go. I was ashamed to tell my story, to admit that my son had treated me like that. But when I finally went, I discovered something surprising. I was not alone. There were other women who had gone through similar things, some even worse, women whose children had abandoned them, had robbed them, had mistreated them, and all of them had found a way to keep going, to rebuild themselves, to find dignity in the midst of pain. Listening to their stories gave me strength. It made me realize that what happened to me was not my fault, that I had not failed as a mother, that I simply raised a son who chose to be selfish. I got a job taking care of an 85-year-old lady 3 times a week. It was not much money, $300 a month, but it helped. Also, I started baking desserts and selling them to neighbors and acquaintances. Cakes, cookies, flans, simple things I had learned to make when Anthony was small. That gave me another $200 a month. It was not enough to live with luxury, but it was enough to survive with dignity. It was enough to not depend on anyone. It was enough to feel useful again, to feel that I still had value, that I could still contribute something to the world. One day, 4 months after the dinner, I was in the park with Rose when I saw Anthony. He was sitting on a bench, alone, looking at his phone. He looked different, thinner, more tired, with deep, dark circles. He saw me before I could turn around. He got up and walked toward me. Rose squeezed my arm. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. I nodded. I did not want to face him alone. Anthony stopped in front of us. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded broken. "I have been looking for you for months." I did not answer, only looked at him, waiting to see what he wanted now. "I need to talk to you." "Please," he insisted. "Speak," I said with a firm voice. Anthony looked at Rose with discomfort. "Alone." I shook my head. "Whatever you have to tell me, you can say it in front of my friend." He sighed, frustrated, but finally spoke. "Heather and I broke up. She left me a month ago." I felt something hearing that, but it was not what I expected. It was not joy. It was not satisfaction. Just emptiness. "I am sorry to hear that," I said. I meant it. Not because I cared about Heather, but because I knew for Anthony that must be painful. "You are not sorry," he said with bitterness. "You were right about her. You were right about everything." "And you come to tell me that now?" I asked. "You come to tell me I was right after everything that happened?" Anthony lowered his gaze. "I come to apologize. I come to tell you I am sorry, that I was wrong, that I should have listened to you." I looked at him in silence for a long moment. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to hug him, wanted to tell him everything was okay, that I forgave him, But the other part, the part that had learned to value herself, knew I could not do that. Not yet. Maybe never. Anthony, I appreciate your apology, but an apology does not erase $8,000. An apology does not erase months of manipulation and mistreatment. An apology does not erase the fact that you left me alone in that restaurant knowing I could not pay that bill. He looked up, with tears in his eyes. I know, Mom. I know. And I do not expect you to forgive me now. I just want you to know I regret it, that I have been living with that guilt every day. I nodded. Good. I hope that guilt makes you a better person. I hope you never treat anyone like you treated me. Anthony took a step toward me, extending his hand as if he wanted to touch me. Can we try again? Can we start from zero? I took a step back. No, Anthony, we cannot. Because I am no longer the same person. I am no longer the mother who says yes to everything. I am no longer the woman who lets herself be trampled just to keep the peace. That woman died that night in the restaurant, and the woman I am now has no space for people who hurt her. But I am your son, he said, and his voice broke completely. I am always going to be your son. I felt tears filling my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Yes, Anthony, you are always going to be my son, and I am always going to love you. But love does not mean accepting mistreatment. Love does not mean sacrificing myself until I have nothing. Love does not mean losing my dignity. And if you cannot love me without hurting me, then it is better we stay apart. Anthony stayed there standing, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. Finally, after a long silence, he nodded. I understand, he said with a voice barely audible. I hope someday you can forgive me. And he left. I watched him walk away, walking with his shoulders slumped, defeated. And I stayed there, standing next to Rose, feeling a mix of emotions I could not describe. Are you okay? Asked Rose, taking my hand. I nodded slowly. Yes, I am okay. And it was true. It hurt. Of course it hurt, but it was a different pain. It was the pain of closing a chapter, of letting go of something that no longer served, of choosing myself for the first time in my life. That night, in my apartment, I sat in front of the mirror and looked at myself, really looked at myself. I saw the wrinkles around my eyes, the gray in my hair, the marks of time on my face, but I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a woman who had survived the worst and had come out the other side, not intact, but whole. I took my notebook and started writing. I wrote about everything that had happened, about everything I had learned, about everything I had felt, and at the bottom of the page, I wrote something that became my new mantra, my new truth. I do not owe my happiness to anyone. I do not owe my money to anyone. I do not owe my dignity to anyone, not even to my son, especially not to my son if he does not know how to value it. I closed the notebook and put it away. Tomorrow would be another day, a day in which I would continue building my new life, a life in which I was the protagonist, not the victim, a life in which I chose who entered and who left, a life in which I finally, after 67 years, learned to put myself first. The following months brought more changes. Paula, Heather's cousin who had visited me, became a friend. She told me that several family members had cut contact with Heather after finding out what she had done. She told me Anthony had to sell his car to pay debts Heather had left. She told me he was living in a small apartment, working 2 jobs, trying to rebuild his life. Part of me felt pity for him, but the other part, the stronger part, knew that was what had to happen. He had to face the consequences of his actions, just as I had to face mine. A year after that dinner, I was in a very different situation. I had paid my credit card debt. I had started saving again. Not much, but something. I had found my place in the women's group, where now I helped others who were going through similar situations. I had learned to live alone without feeling alone. I had learned that family is not just blood. It is also the people you choose, the people who value you, the people who treat you with respect, and above all, I had learned the most important lesson of all, that it is never too late to recover your dignity. It is never too late to say enough. It is never too late to choose yourself, because in the end, the only person you are going to live with every day of your life is yourself. And you deserve to live with someone who respects you, who values you, who loves you, even if that person is yourself.